Good morning, everybody. Just a small introduction. For those who don't know me, I'm an African fish biodiversity guy and not really into inland fisheries. But I want to talk to you about the inland fisheries in Africa. Why is that? Because I won't reveal my age, but let's say that for a couple of decades I have been working and traveling and visiting Africa, and I saw things changing, and I didn't find this back in the scientific literature. So I went just for a quick look to try to get a grip of what is going on over there. My title mentioned the quiet crisis. Why do I do this? Well, if we see on this slide the global decline in biodiversity, we see that freshwater is hit most. And also, I found, and not only me, but others found that freshwater conservation is not really obvious in the SDG targets. It's only sideways mentioned in clean water and sanitation and life on land. There is fresh water. And so the SDG 14, life below water, is all about marine areas. And I'm working in freshwater, so I don't like this. It's a silent crisis because the fishes are actually very important in Africa, inland fisheries, so freshwater fishes. And you see here on the map various countries indicated in which more than 20% of animal protein comes from fish. And of course you see some concentrations of dots here, here, here. But these are marine countries, or countries at least with a large marine area. And you see a large concentration also of dots in Africa, with many landlocked or almost landlocked countries, meaning that inland fisheries is very important to the local people. We have seen this yesterday, so I'm not going to share much about this. This is the state of the global stock. So if this is happening on a global scale, so what's happening in African inland fisheries then? That was my initial question. This is a report from FAO 24, in which they asked a couple of persons to assess the most important inland fisheries and to assess the basins. And to my surprise, a lot of results indicated that there's a relative low pressure in most of the aquatic systems in Africa. And that contrasts a bit with my personal experience over the decades. So the official catch statistics here for Africa, marine as well as inland waters and aquaculture, everything goes up. So this looks very good, very positive for Africa. But there's a paradox. So you have all these reports, those official reports of increasing catches, but if you then look to the sparse scientific studies and also to the anecdotes and myself going to Africa and seeing changes, that indicates that catches are decreasing. So why are all reports increasing while we see that in fact it is decreasing? There can be several reasons for it, several severe underreporting in the past. And there have been some studies done, Flouet-Chouinard, if I pronounce that exactly, did a study on households and estimated catches from there. And they estimated that the real catches are over 200% of what has been reported for many countries, or for many even over 400%. So that's a serious underreporting. There's also a study done in Daniel's lab by Mika Schmidt. I was just sideways involved. That indicates that between 50 and 2019, in 49 of the 54 African countries and territories, there's an underreport of more than 50% for 75% of these countries, and in half of these countries, it should have been double. So also here, every indication says that reports are not that great. So why then see we these increasing catches? Certainly, what is certainly going on is a lot more effort in terms of fishermen and gears and boats and engines. And also maybe this increase is more apparent than real because of better reporting. And I think that's also a very important part of it. And now one of the symptoms, and I will discuss it later also, is that with intense fishing and collapse of certain stocks, you may get a higher fish production. So that means that not always when you have a higher fish production, that the stocks are in a good health. So you actually go to a less biodiverse system. This was actually a nice study that I came across, an audit of inlet capture fisheries, already more than 10 years ago now, but still very relevant because it scored the levels of confidence of the inland fisheries reports of various countries. And we see for the major fish-producing countries that many end up with a C, or eventually even were A, so had acceptable statistics, and then went into C quite recently. So the majority of the countries with the largest inland fisheries production are not doing their job quite well. So I had a look for some of the countries to the statistics, and that was a bit of an eye-opener. These are inland statistics for Botswana. I have no idea what they mean. If anybody can help me, please tell me. South Africa, which is supposed to be the jewel in Southern Africa, this is what they report. That's the same as saying we don't know. That's just a plateau. We report every year the same thing, regardless of what is happening on the ground. Same thing for Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, okay, not really very big inland fisheries countries, but still can't do anything with this kind of statistics. Ivory Coast, what's happening there? Why did it go in a couple of years to this high level and then went down, and now they're a plateau? Here, Sierra Leone, no idea what this means in terms of real fisheries. Malawi, I spent 3 years in Malawi. I know quite well the situation over there, and I see quite a steep increase with almost doubling of the catches. And all reports that I know about from Lake Malawi talk about overfishing, and decrease. So yeah, now we see a little bit of decrease, but maybe those large quantities have to do with the fact that they are getting a lot of juvenile small cyprinids, kind of sardine-like cyprinid. Angola, very steep increase and then very steep decrease. Why? I've no idea. Mali, just another example. One would think this is relatively okay. It looks pretty stable. They had a plateau, but at least it's a good report. But then if you look at it, then you see, except for a small hiccup, that the percentage of the various groups they report remains the same, which sort of indicates that it's not really serious. So then the next question, are the modern paradigms of marine fisheries, are they relevant in inland fisheries in Africa as well? Like the tragedy of the commons, or get as much fish as you can get while you can get it? Is that there? Yes, to a large extent it is, because in many regions access to fisheries is unlimited and free. There are some countries that are trying different types of co-management, beach management units and all these things. Sometimes with success, sometimes, like in Uganda, they return to the old situation. That's really the army that comes down for law enforcement. Shifting baselines was discussed yesterday. This is actually a very nice thing. It's not from Africa, but I do like it because this is the trophy fish caught at Key West in 57, 80, 1980 and 2007. So this should be the biggest trophies they got. So that's a really good sign of shifting baselines. We have it in Africa as well. And I take myself as an example because I worked there between 96 and 99, and they have those endemic tilapias, the chambo. And I thought they were everywhere. They were doing pretty well. We bought them just to eat. They were good, nice food. But what I didn't realize at that moment was that 96 here, the stock was already clearly diminished, while it was healthy, in my opinion. I went back to Malawi a couple of times, and now chambo are critically endangered. And I was part of an IUCN Red List assessment, and it was assumed that from 2006 to 2016, there was a decline of 94%. So even when I was there in 96, it had diminished quite a lot. And now over the last 20 years or so, it diminished even more. So what's left of this beautiful fish is just a small fraction, a few percentages. And it was a highly economically valued species. Shifting baselines, taking Lake Victoria as an example, this is a kind of food web, what it was before the introduction of Nile perch. This is the food web since a couple of decades after the introduction of Nile perch. And I'm pretty sure that the generation of fisheries managers will look to this and will take this as the kind of normal situation, while this was the normal situation with a very complicated food web. Last paradigm, fishing down the food web. Do we have it? Yes, okay, I took this from one of Daniel's group publication, and we see for global freshwater, it goes down. It also goes down in Africa. It has to do with the same thing that I mentioned before, that sometimes when you overfish the predators and certain stocks, then you get a higher production in the beginning because you use stocks on a lower trophic level. So actually production increases for a while before it collapses. Just one look at the future for the last minute that I have. There's a nice sentence from Binet et al. That for many households in Africa, fish are regarded a bank in the water. So the money, the fish should always be there if you need it. But that will not be the case, I'm afraid, in the future. The population growth in Africa will require a lot more of fish production, and that's, in my opinion, very, very difficult. So aquaculture, does that help? Yes, it goes up, but we see that Africa's total aquaculture is only 2.6% of the world production, with 1.7 already attributed to Egypt. So there's not much aquaculture production on a world scale level going on. And then there's cage culture in Lake Victoria. They fish out Lake Victoria first, then the water remains, and then you can do fish culture. Okay. And that's my last slide. Just mentioning the Aichi biodiversity target, and it has passed already. We should have, by 2020, overfishing should have been avoided, recovery plans should have been made, fisheries should have no adverse impact on biodiversity, and so on. I did not see this happening in Africa. Okay, thank you.